The wind moans through the cracks in the stone, like something alive, something grieving. You sit on the edge of a straw-stuffed mattress, your bare feet pressed to the cold floor, breath coiling in the air like smoke from an unseen fire. The candle beside you flickers, casting long shadows that tremble across the walls, turning furniture into specters and beams into gallows. Each breath you take feels like the last one you'll own. Outside the window, the moon hangs low and yellow, veiled by mist, watching in silence like a god who no longer intervenes. The room is still, but not quiet. You hear your mother pacing just beyond the curtain, her slippered feet brushing stone in a rhythm that sounds almost like prayer. Her hands, you noticed earlier, were bruised, knuckles purpling beneath stretched skin. From the loom? From your father? You don't ask. No one asks. Down in the courtyard, your brothers shout. Swords clash in mock battle, wooden blades ringing with youthful war cries. They are loud and bold and weightless. Their bloodline is their armor. Their laughter rises like a hymn to the night sky. Your bloodline is your collar. You stare at the dress hanging on the wooden peg. It's blue, dyed with indigo that took your family nearly a season's worth of barley to trade. The fabric is stiff and heavy, meant to impress, not comfort. The sleeves are too long. The bodice too tight. It was sewn to fit not your body, but a man's expectations. It looks less like a gown and more like a burial shroud. Tomorrow, you will wear it. Tomorrow, you will be given. The door creaks open, and your mother slips in. Her face is pale in the candlelight, more bone than skin, her eyes rimmed red but dry. She kneels before you with hands that tremble but never hesitate. She brushes your hair, slow, mechanical strokes that pull and snag, as though punishing the strands for daring to grow wild. She says nothing. There is nothing left to say. She was 13, too. When she speaks, it is a whisper so faint the flame almost dies trying to hear it. Don't cry, she says. If you cry, it will be harder for him to want you. Your stomach twists. You taste iron. You nod. Far away, the church bell tolls once, distant and low, as if even heaven wants no part in what is about to happen. The walls of the manor feel closer now, as though the very stone is breathing in, ready to swallow you whole. You close your eyes and imagine running. Not far, just into the woods, where the trees don't ask questions and the cold would be kinder than what's waiting behind the chapel doors. But you won't run. You know that. You never really could. Your name is already inked beside his. The parchment has already been sealed. And your father, who hasn't looked you in the eyes all day, will not allow his greatest transaction to go unpaid. You are a vessel. Not of choice, but of continuation. You will carry a name that isn't yours. You will bear children for a house not your own. And you will be remembered not for who you were, but for what you produced. The candle guttered. The shadows swallowed the last of the girl you were. And the silence that follows is not empty. It's waiting. If you feel even a fraction of what she feels right now, subscribe. Because if her story is forgotten, it's because you chose to scroll. And if you don't, tell us in the comments why. But make it count. She deserves at least that. The ink dries before dawn. It lies thick on the vellum, dark as spilled blood, curling at the edges like it already knows what it cost. The contract rests on the table in the hall, centered between two goblets of wine and a dull-bladed dagger. The men have gone to bed, their breath sour with drink, their pockets heavier than they were yesterday. But the parchment remains, pulsing quietly in the silence, like something not quite dead. You are not mentioned by name until the third paragraph. And even then, it is not your name they are discussing, but your measurements. The width of your hips. The cleanliness of your lineage. The weight of your dowry. You wake before the sun, drawn to the noise of hushed voices and clinking coin. You peer through the crack in the door. Your father stands with two men you do not recognize, both wear furs despite the heat, their hands stained with the oil of old parchment. They speak in Latin, in French, in English, all twisted together into the language of business. Occasionally, someone laughs. It is never your father. You hear your age said aloud. 13. Ripe enough. A good time to sow. Then a question, what comes with her? Not who. What? The list follows, your price in parts, 8 acres of barley land near the marsh. 2 milk-producing goats. 3 bolts of wool, spun and dyed. A silver clasp that once belonged to your grandmother. And half the rights to the salt cart from the southern road. This is your worth. A girl who once picked wildflowers by the stream is now land and livestock. Salt and cloth. Barter to buy a man with a title and a rotting estate, who has already outlived 2 wives. No one speaks of them. Just as no one will one day speak of you. You want to scream, to burst into that hall and demand they stop. But you already know how that would go. He would call you ungrateful. He would call you a child. And you would be both right and powerless. Your mother told you, months ago, in a voice lined with lead, that your father had been waiting for the right offer. That your future was too precious to waste on sentiment. That love is a luxury and survival is a currency. You remember the way her jaw clenched when she said it. Not because she believed it, but because she had to. Now, the offer has come. Sir Aldrich of Hollowmarsh. 52. Twice widowed. No sons. Holdings diminished but name still noble. He needs a womb that works and a hand that obeys. Your father needs fewer mouths to feed and a stronger tie to the garrison near the river. The match is made. There is no mention of your laughter. No clause for your fears. No space for your voice. The men clasp hands and the contract is sealed, not with wax, but with wine and spit and a muttered blessing from a half-sober chaplain. The dagger that cut the bread now slices the air between them. And somewhere in the next room, you stop being a person. You become an agreement. A settlement. A solution. You return to your pallet, but you do not sleep. Instead, you lie in the dark, feeling the parchment press against your chest like a second ribcage. You wonder if you'll ever breathe freely again. If your skin will ever belong to you again. If your silence is a virtue, or just the first thing they take from you. If you're still watching, still feeling her fear and not looking away, subscribe. Because someone has to record this story, and it won't be the history books. And if you won't, if you think silence is enough, leave a comment and tell us why this girl is easier to forget than to protect. They say you are old enough. Not because you've asked to be wed, not because you understand what it means, but because your body bleeds. Once. That is all it takes. A stain on a linen sheet. A whispered report from your mother to your father. A conversation exchanged behind a closed door, where your name is not spoken as a person but as a verdict. She is ready. Ready for what? Your hands still tremble when they're forced to thread a needle. You cry when the rooster crows too close to the window. You hide when your uncle raises his voice, and yet, the world has declared you of sound body, and therefore, fit for use. The law is clear. Canon law. Common law. Local law. All written in the same ink that blots out your humanity. By 12, a girl may be given. A child with teeth barely grown into her jaw may be bound in holy matrimony to a man 3 times her age, and the union is legal. Not just permitted, but protected. And what's more, it is encouraged. Because a fertile girl is wasted unmarried, and a family with too many mouths cannot afford luxury in the shape of innocence. In villages, they measure age by bleeding. In cities, by inheritance. But no one asks the girl herself. There is no law that listens for hesitation. No priest that pauses when the child hesitates at the altar. No ink in the margins that asks if she understands what forever means. Consent is not a vow you give. It is a line in a book written by men who never had to bleed for it. They speak of noble romance. They paint tapestries of lovers embracing under moonlight. They write poems of devotion and songs of eternal fidelity. But those stories are always between knights and noblewomen, after the marriage is sealed. The girl is never consulted in the sonnet. Her heart is never the verse. Because the truth is this, medieval marriage was child grooming wrapped in velvet and scripture. A lord might see a girl at mass, note the way she walks, the softness of her cheek, and inquire if she has begun her woman's journey. That was the phrase. Her woman's journey. And if the answer is yes, or nearly, arrangements are made. If you cry at the prospect, you are hysterical. If you protest, you are defiant. If you run, you are mad. And if you agree, it is only because no other door was left open to you. This is not love. This is logistics. This is population control. This is the tightening of power through bodies that bruise and bear and break in silence. The church will bless the union. The law will enforce it. The villagers will witness it. And you, child, will learn to hold your screams until they turn into prayers. Because in this world, a girl's readiness is not defined by her mind, but by her womb. The moment your body dares to mimic womanhood, they will tear the girl from your skin and replace her with a title, wife. So when you hear someone speak of simpler times, of tradition, of marriage the way it used to be, remember the truth that was carved into the bones of 13-year-old girls across centuries. It was never about love. It was never about choice. It was about control. And if you can feel the weight of that truth pressing on your chest, like the ink of a law written in someone else's favor, subscribe. Because if we don't tell it, the myth of noble romance will keep spreading like rot beneath velvet. And if you don't, if you choose not to, at least have the courage to say why, in the comments. Say why her silence should be eternal. The bells ring hollow. Not in joy, not in glory, but in obligation. The sound peals through the gray morning like a blade across damp wool, and every chime is a warning dressed as tradition. Your wedding day has come. You are wrapped in blue. The dress your mother stitched with aching fingers has been fastened at the throat with a brooch you've never worn and will never own. It is not yours. None of it is. Not the ribbon in your hair, not the slippers on your feet, not the trembling fingers that clutch a withering garland of dried rosemary and rue. They say it wards off lust. They say it encourages fertility. They say it smells like purity. You think it smells like graves. You are led from the manor by two women who do not speak your name. One adjusts the hem of your gown. The other murmurs a prayer that doesn't seem to include your soul. The wind bites at your cheeks, but no one offers you a cloak. You're not to arrive too warm, too comfortable, too human. You must look docile. Small. Willing. Outside, the villagers have gathered. Not dressed for a feast, but for a witnessing. They line the narrow path to the church like sentinels. Not smiling. Not clapping. Watching. Recording you in memory like a ledger entry. Proof. That's all they are here for. In a world without parchment for the poor, memory is the only contract. You reach the church door. Not the altar. Not the nave. The door. Because until the 13th century, that's where marriages happened. Not within the sacred space of Holy Communion, but just outside it, like an unwashed traveler kept off sacred ground. The church, though eager to bless the outcome, never quite embraced the act. Marriage was still too worldly, too carnal, too bloody to be truly holy. So the priest stands on the threshold, not inside, and reads the rites like an auctioneer. He doesn't look at you. He looks at your father. At the man beside you, your betrothed. A man whose name you learned only months ago. His boots are caked with the road, his breath is sour with last night's wine, and his eyes weigh you with the same interest a man gives to livestock before a trade. The priest begins. Not with a welcome, but with a legal statement. He recites the contract. He asks your father if you are free to be given. He asks your groom if he accepts you in exchange for the dowry, the land, the goats, the salt rights. He does. He never asks you. Your silence is assumed to be consent. Your stillness is read as piety. Your compliance is counted as virtue. And when your mouth opens, not to protest, just to breathe, it is mistaken for all. The words of the priest fall in Latin and mud, each syllable heavy with history. Wilt thou have this man? You do not answer. Your father answers for you. And when you finally murmur I will, the words vanish into the cold like a dying ember. No one notices. Your groom slides a ring onto your finger. It is not gold. It is iron. Because iron does not bend. Iron is for shackles. For hinges. For blades. Iron is forever. The villagers nod. They have seen this before. They will see it again. This is not a wedding. It is a notarized exchange. A ceremony to make you legally unreturnable. Should you scream, should you beg to come home, they will remember this day and say, no, she was given. We were there. We saw. And so, before God and community, you are no longer your father's daughter. You are now a man's property. Transferred, taxed, and bound. The priest raises his hand. He does not bless your heart. He does not mention love. He offers a benediction for fruitfulness, for peaceful obedience, for many sons. He turns and walks inside. The door closes behind him. Your husband does not. He stays at your side, his hand on your back like a claim. Are you just watching, or are you witnessing? If you're here, make it matter. Subscribe so stories like hers don't rot in the margins of history. And if you won't, tell us why she doesn't deserve remembrance. Say it plainly, before time swallows her name like so many others. The feast is a performance. The tables groan under the weight of roasted meat and spiced bread, tankards foaming with ale, platters heaped with fruit no one will eat. Laughter echoes through the stone hall like a ritual incantation, desperate and loud, meant to drown out the silence inside you. You sit beside your new husband at the head of the table. Your legs dangle above the floor. Your fingers press into your lap until they go numb. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not eat. He does. He eats with the ease of a man who has already won. His hand rests too long on your shoulder. His voice is thick with wine and arrogance. He talks of horses. Of land. Of the number of sons he hopes for. He calls you, girl, when he addresses you at all. The minstrels begin to sing. They sing of courtly love. Of roses and devotion and knights who would die for a lady's hand. And still, you sit beside a man who bought your body with barley and goats. The irony hangs heavier than the candle smoke. As the evening deepens, so does the crudeness of the company. The guests, men and women both, begin to drink in earnest. Their laughter shifts. Their stories sour. Their jokes turn to wedding nights, to sheets, to blood. They toast not to love, but to possession. To the breaking in of a bride. To the proving of her purity. You are not blushing. You are burning. You feel your body curl inward, as though trying to fold itself into non-existence. But there is nowhere to go. The night marches forward like a death sentence. Eventually, your mother appears at your side. Her eyes are dry but distant. Her face drawn tight like a window shut against a storm. She takes your hand. It's time. The words are simple. They carry the weight of execution. You are led up the stairs by a procession. Laughter follows you. Whispers. Advice. Encouragement. The older women speak of their own nights like lore passed through the bloodline. One hands you a cloth soaked in rose water. Another tucks dried lavender under your arm, murmuring something about making it easier, sweeter. Nothing will make this sweet. The chamber door opens. The room is lit with a single candle. The bed looms large and wooden, the sheets white and coarse. A basin sits beside it, prepared, as always, for the aftermath. You are not alone. The guests crowd the doorway. Some enter. Others press in behind them. The priest is there, too. Not to protect you. Not to offer sanctuary. But to bless the sheets. To murmur Latin prayers while water is sprinkled over the linen, over the mattress, over the skin you wish you could shed like old bark. Your husband enters, drunk but deliberate. He smiles. You want to vanish. The women begin to undress you. They do so with a methodical efficiency, their hands practiced, their eyes impassive. Your dress is folded carefully, as if this were a sacred moment, not a dismantling. Your shift remains, thin and near transparent. It does nothing to shield you. One woman braids your hair back. Another adjusts the bedding. Their hands feel like tools, like a ritual chore. No one speaks to you. They speak about you. He removes his tunic. He is not handsome. He is not gentle. He is not waiting. The crowd lingers. Some crack jokes. Some offer crude advice. He laughs along with them, lifting the sheets, exposing what should never be seen by others. You lie back, wooden and numb, your breath trapped somewhere in your chest, your heart pounding so loud it drowns the voices. He touches your thigh. You flinch. The priest nods solemnly. This is the price of your new name. This is the final seal of the contract. You are not asked if you are ready. You are not asked if you are afraid. You are asked for one thing, and one thing only, blood. The blood must come. It is not for you. It is for the crowd. For your father. For the village. For the ledger. For the story they will all tell tomorrow. She was pure. She bled. She was taken. And if the blood does not come, there are herbs. There are tricks. There are whispers among midwives of animal blood soaked into cloth, of fingers pricked just enough to stain the sheet. Because failure to bleed is not a private matter. It is a public crisis. It can void the contract. It can ruin your name. It can end in annulment. In shame. In beatings. Or worse. The witnesses do not leave until they are satisfied that you are no longer a girl. Not in body. Not in ownership. And when the door closes, when finally the last laugh fades down the corridor, you are alone with the man who believes you now belong to him in every way. He does not ask if it hurts. He does not notice the tears. And you do not scream. Because if you do, they might return to watch again. This is the bedding ritual. It is not a night of love. It is not a celebration. It is a violent confirmation of power, cloaked in ceremony, sharpened by expectation, enforced by community. A child was brought to bed. A woman is expected to rise. But you, lying in that bed with pain between your legs and fire in your throat, do not feel like a woman. You feel like a grave that's still breathing. And if you've made it this far, if you've followed her from contract to consummation and still see her as more than a footnote, then you've already witnessed more than most ever will. Subscribe, not because it's routine, but because you now carry her silence inside you. And if you won't, then say it. In the comments. Say why this night doesn't deserve remembering. Say why her blood, her fear, her body, don't matter. Say it with your name, so hers is not the only one they forget. The pain begins before the dawn. It starts low, an ache in your back, a slow twist in your gut like a cord being pulled tighter and tighter by invisible hands. At first, you think it's another punishment for disobedience. You've learned to expect pain when your husband drinks, or when the kitchen is too slow, or when your voice rises without permission. But this pain is different. This pain grows. You are 14. Your belly has swelled into something foreign, something monstrous. You no longer walk without effort. You sleep in stiff fits, waking drenched in sweat or sobbing without sound. Your feet are swollen, your breasts raw and leaking. Every step is a weight. Every breath a labor. No one calls you a mother. Not yet. They call you expectant, as if your only identity now is anticipation. The household prepares not for the child, but for proof of usefulness. The priest has blessed the room. The midwife has sharpened her knife. Your husband has instructed the servants to ready the cradle and another dressmaker to begin stitching the next wedding gown, for if this child dies, there will be another, and another. Because that is what you are now. A womb with a name that is fading. The labor begins in earnest as the sky turns gray. You are brought to the birthing chamber, a cold, narrow room with thick stone walls and no windows. The fire barely warms the air. The bed is low to the ground, padded with straw, soaked in old blood from women whose names no one speaks anymore. The midwife is called Agnes. Her hands are rough and cracked, her eyes half blind from too many nights like this. She mutters prayers as she works, not for you, but to ward off spirits, to chase away death as if it were a pest at the door. She ties charms to your wrists. Presses a piece of jasper to your belly. Burns dried lavender and eagle feathers in a clay bowl near the hearth. It does nothing. The pain becomes everything. It swallows the hours, the words, the air. You scream until your throat tears. Then you scream in silence. Agnes presses herbs to your tongue that make your vision blur. You vomit. Then convulse. Then go still. You think you will die. You want to. It would be easier. Your husband does not come. He waits below, pacing, impatient. Not for you, but for a son. He does not ask about your pain. He does not ask if you will live. He asks only one thing. Is it done yet? When the baby finally comes, it is dusk. The candle has nearly burned out. You are soaked in blood, your skin ice cold, your breath shallow. You cannot lift your head. You cannot feel your legs. A daughter. That is the word they say aloud. Not beautiful. Not healthy. Just daughter. Agnes sighs. She wraps the child in linen and hands her to a nurse without looking at you. The room is quiet. No bells ring. No toasts are raised. No one weeps with joy. You try to ask for her. To see her face, but your voice is too weak. Your husband enters only briefly. He glances at the bundle, then at you. His lips press into a line. She will need to do better next time, he says to no one in particular. Then he leaves. The nurse takes the baby away. You are left with torn flesh, a fever already blooming in your blood, and the cold knowledge that nothing you endured was enough. The days after are worse. Your breasts swell and crack. You cry without meaning to. The fever burns hotter. Agnes returns with more herbs, more charms, more prayers. They offer no comfort. Your child is not brought to you. You are not asked to name her. She is called Eleanor, after your husband's mother. The wet nurse is told to keep her full, keep her clean, and keep her quiet. You are told to heal. Quickly. Because you are expected again before winter. And you are. Within weeks, your husband is in your bed again. He calls it his right. He does not wait for you to stop bleeding. He does not wait for your strength to return. And so the cycle begins. A second pregnancy. You are 15. This time, the child dies in your womb. Agnes delivers a stillborn boy with gray skin and closed eyes. Your husband does not speak for 3 days. Then he returns and does not look at you as he climbs into bed. At 16, you bear another daughter. She survives. At 17, another miscarriage. You bleed for 3 days. The chapel bells toll. At 18, a third daughter. You survive, but just barely. Your body breaks slowly. Your teeth loosen. Your bones ache in the rain. Your hair begins to fall out. Your hands shake. You speak less. You pray more. You stop dreaming altogether. No one celebrates. No one mourns. You are not a mother, not in the way you once imagined. You are a vessel, and the measure of your worth is tallied in sons you do not have. You are told the pain is holy. That Eve sinned first, and you suffer for her weakness. That childbirth is a woman's battlefield. That your silence is strength, and your grief is a kind of faith. But you know the truth. This is not sacrifice. It is slaughter. Spread slowly across years. And if you felt her agony just now, if you heard her breathless cries echo through the stone chamber and still remained, then carry that weight forward. Subscribe. Because her story won't survive unless someone insists it should. And if you don't, if you let her bleed into silence again, then say so. In the comments. Explain why she deserves to disappear. But say it loud. She no longer can. The law does not love you. It does not shield you. It does not hear you. It names you wife, and with that word, it erases everything that once existed before. Your name, your voice, your ownership of self, all slip quietly beneath the surface, like a stone dropped into deep, dark water. No ripple. No mark. Just absence. Canon law is clear. The husband is the head of the wife. Not in metaphor. Not in spirit. In fact. In governance. In body and soul. This is not romantic leadership. It is sovereignty. He is the king, and you are the conquered land. Once married, you are not a person under the law. You are covered. That is the word. Coverture. A legal doctrine designed to fold you into your husband like parchment into flame. You do not burn on your own. You are only ash through him. Under coverture. You cannot own property. You cannot sign a contract. You cannot sue. You cannot inherit without permission. You cannot give your daughter to marriage, even if she begs. You cannot even write a will. Because you, in the eyes of the law, no longer exist. If you work, your wages are his. If you craft or sew, your earnings are his. If your body brings forth children, it is not your bloodline. It is his house expanding. Even your soul is no longer yours. If you write a letter, he may read it. If you pray, he may demand to know the words. If you confess your sins to a priest, he may insist the priest tell him what you said. And they will. Because the church teaches that obedience is not just a duty, it is a virtue. That a wife who submits, even to cruelty, is following the example of the saints. The pain in your chest when he strikes you. A test. The ache in your womb after he forces himself on you. A calling. The silence you bury in your belly when you want to scream. A blessing. You are praised for being small. For being still. For being obedient. But not all obedience is fear. Some is calculation. You learn quickly how to move when he is watching. How to lower your gaze just enough. How to nod at the right moments. How to twist your face into something soft, something unthreatening. You do not think less. You do not feel less. You simply learn to bury it. Even your thoughts are dangerous. A woman who speaks too plainly is called sharp-tongued. A woman who questions a priest is proud. A woman who teaches other women is troublesome. And a woman who does not obey is wicked. You are none of these. And all of them. But you play the part. You sew. You kneel. You smile when he enters. You nod when he tells you what your duties are. Manage the servants. Keep the ledgers, if you're trusted. Tend to guests, but only those he approves. Bear sons, and try not to die in the process. Be pleasant, and never political. Be faithful, though he is not. Be quiet, though he is loud. Be willing, though your heart fractures with every touch. This is not partnership. This is servitude in a crown. And the world applauds it. They call your silence graceful. They call your obedience noble. They say you are lucky to be chosen at all. But you know better. You know that the world was not designed for women like you to thrive. Only to survive. And barely. And every time you speak, even to yourself, you ask if it is allowed. You ask if you will be punished. You ask if today is the day he will notice your thoughts and call them rebellion. But you still think them. Late at night, when the house has gone to sleep and your body aches, you stare at the ceiling and remember what it felt like to run in the woods. To pick wild berries. To laugh until your ribs hurt. To dream of things beyond the manor walls. You do not say these memories aloud. But they live inside you. And perhaps that is the final form of disobedience. To remember who you were before they wrote you out of the story. If the idea of obedience under threat makes you ache, subscribe. If it doesn't, explain why in the comments. But remember, you're not commenting for yourself. You're commenting in front of her ghost. She hears every silence. Every excuse. Every time someone chose law over justice. Make sure what you say is worth her listening. You bleed before the baby comes. Sometimes during. Sometimes after. And sometimes, forever. The chamber is quiet now, except for the fire and the low chant of the midwife. You are older, 18, perhaps 19. The years have blurred. You count time not by birthdays or seasons, but by pregnancies. By how long since the last pain. By how soon until the next. This is your 5th. 2 daughters live. 1 son was stillborn. Another miscarriage in the spring. And now this one, another boy, the midwife says, judging by the shape of your belly. You don't care. You've learned not to hope. Not to name them too soon. Not to love too early. You lie on your side, one hand gripping the bedpost, the other clenched around a strip of leather soaked in wine. You chew it when the pain comes in waves. You scream into it when the pain comes like a flood. The women around you pray, some loud, some quiet, all urgent. They speak not to you, but to saints, to relics, to bones buried in gilded boxes half a world away. No doctors. No healing hands. Only charms and chants and desperate faith. Agnes, the old midwife, ties a cord of red wool around your wrist. She hangs an image of Saint Margaret above the bed, patroness of safe deliveries. On your chest she places a sliver of wood said to come from the cross of Christ. And under your tongue she places a chip of eagle's talon, hollowed and bitter. You are told it will make the labor faster. You are told it will keep death away. You are told to believe. But belief cannot stop blood loss. It cannot shift a baby who will not turn. It cannot heal the tear that reaches your thigh or the fever that will rise 3 days later and burn through your veins like fire through dry hay. You have seen what happens when belief fails. You were there when your husband's cousin bled out in her birthing chair. You heard her scream. You saw the way the priest refused to touch her, afraid her blood might stain his robe. You saw how they buried her at dawn without a marker, because a dead mother was a shameful omen. She had been 20. Now it's your turn. The contraction seize your spine. You bite down so hard on the leather that your teeth crack. Your thighs are slick with sweat and blood. You cannot feel your toes. The pain splits you in half, then in half again. You cry out for water. For light. For anyone to tell you that you are still whole. But no one answers. Because in this room, pain is part of the design. This is not just childbirth. It is a spiritual battle. That's what the church says. You are atoning for Eve. For the apple. For the curse. For the pride of thinking for yourself. This agony is divine justice. This agony is womanhood fulfilled. This agony is your cross to bear. And if you die, well, then you were not strong enough. Not pious enough. Not worthy of the gift. If the baby dies, they will say God needed him more. But God is not here. Only Agnes, and the relics, and the cold. Hours pass. You stop screaming. There's nothing left to give. The women press your legs apart. The candle gutters. Your vision dims. You feel something tear. You hear someone whisper, "She's going." And then, the baby cries. A sound so small, so sudden, it doesn't feel real. A boy. They say it like an answer to a question you never asked. They show him to you. Just a glimpse. Wrinkled, wet, wide-eyed. Then they carry him out. To your husband. To the nurse. To the future that was never yours to shape. You ask for water. They give you wine. You ask for your child. They say you must rest. You ask if you'll live. No one answers. You lie back in the blood-soaked bed, bones shattered, muscles torn, tears drying on your face. The relic still rests on your chest. But it has grown cold. 1 in 8. That is the number they never say aloud. 1 in 8 women will not rise from the bed they bled in. You have outlived that number for now. But you know it waits. You see it in the eyes of the women who cleaned your body. You hear it in the priest's prayer for peace in her time. You feel it in your womb, already ruined, already preparing for the next trial. And you realize, this is not survival. This is a sentence. Repeat it until it breaks you. And if it hasn't broken you yet, it will. So if you feel her pain, not just her body's torment, but the betrayal of a world that made her agony holy, then say something. Subscribe. Because her life, her death, her scream in the night, it cannot just vanish into old stone and forgotten records. And if you won't, if you choose not to speak for her, then don't be silent. Tell us why. In the comments. Tell her ghost why you chose not to remember her. She is the smallest thing you've ever held. Your daughter, swaddled in coarse linen, her breath soft against your chest, her eyes barely open. Her hand fits between 2 of your fingers, and when she curls it into a fist, you almost forget the blood still drying between your thighs. Almost. You hold her close, afraid she will vanish. Afraid that if you blink, the cold wind through the shuttered window will steal her away. But she does not belong to you, not truly. Not legally. Not spiritually. Not even in the eyes of your husband, who sees in her not softness, not joy, not miracle, but failure. Because she is not a boy. When he visited your chamber after the birth, he said nothing at first. Just looked at her face with a flatness you'd come to recognize, disappointment dressed as indifference. He kissed your forehead, not your lips. He congratulated the midwife, not you. And before he turned to leave, he muttered, "We'll try again soon." That was the closest he came to blessing her life. You name her in secret. No one asks you for a name. No one waits. A priest records her birth as a daughter of Lord Thomas and his wife. Not of you. Not of your blood. You name her in a whisper while she sleeps, in the candlelight, alone. Ellen. You trace the letters into the air above her head, as if that might mark her with something the world cannot take. But even as you hold her, even as you feed her, something darker waits beneath your breastbone. Because you know, you will lose her. Perhaps not to death, though death waits at every turn. But to distance. To duty. To men who will carve their expectations into her skin just as they did yours. Already, plans are being made. Your husband speaks with neighbors, barons, lords. He mentions alliances, potential unions, future property mergers. He says she is, of fine stock. He boasts of your dowry, your lineage, the fertility of your body as proof of her promise. He trades her future like grain, before she's even learned to walk. You protest, softly, carefully. He reminds you of your place. So you return to silence. But the ache never leaves. She begins to grow. She smiles first at the maid, not you. She takes her first step in the great hall while you're still mending linens in the solar. She says, "Father," before she says, "Mother." And one day, she is taken from your arms. They say it is custom. A nursemaid is assigned. A wet nurse if you are sick. A governess if your husband deems it fit. The justification is always the same: a lady has duties. A child is better raised by hands trained for it. But it is not custom. It is cruelty masked in tradition. Because they do not trust your love to be rational. They do not trust your grief to be orderly. They do not trust you to let go when the time comes, so they begin the letting go now. You are allowed to visit. You are allowed to sit in the nursery while she plays with toys you've never seen, eats from bowls you did not prepare, sings songs you were never taught, but you are not her world. Not anymore. And when she falls and scrapes her knee, it is the maid who lifts her. When she wakes crying in the night, it is the nurse who soothes her. And when she begins to dream of the life ahead, she does not know to dread it. Because she has not yet understood what it means to belong to a man. You do. You see it all coming. At 7, they will speak of her betrothal. At 9, she will learn to stitch her dowry. At 11, her meals will be watched for womanly change. At 12, she will be given. And there will be nothing you can do. Because motherhood, in this world, is not possession. It is not protection. It is not permanence. It is witnessing the theft of your own heart in slow motion. You begin to count days, not forward, but backward. How many you have left before she is no longer yours? How many kisses? How many lullabies? How many times you'll braid her hair or feel her fingers grasp yours in trust? And at night, you pray not for her happiness, but for her survival. That her husband is kind. That childbirth spares her. That grief doesn't turn her hard. That she remembers your voice, even if the world forgets your name. You love her more than breath. And yet, she is never yours. If that truth makes your throat close, if the thought of loving something only to hand it to the fire makes your chest ache, subscribe. Not out of habit. Not out of pity. But because somewhere, across centuries of silence, a mother begged to be remembered. And if you won't remember her, then say why in the comments. Say why her arms should stay empty forever. Say it clearly, because the shadow of her loss is still listening. You are a wife. Not by choice. Not by prayer. Not by the tender unfolding of romance. By design. By ledger. By law. And with that word, wife, comes a list of unpaid roles so long, so unrelenting, it could choke a priest mid-sermon. You are not just a bearer of children. You are a laborer, a steward, a hostess, a bookkeeper, a healer, a diplomat, a maid, a seamstress, and, above all else, an investment. From the moment your husband signed your marriage contract, you became a line item on his estate's balance sheet. He paid for your dowry. He purchased the rights to your womb. And now, you must earn your worth back, quietly, diligently, without error. You rise before the sun. You walk the grounds, inspect the kitchens, correct the servants. You count sacks of grain, haggle with tradesmen, approve menus, ensure the buttery is full. You do this without formal education. Without recognition. Without pay. And when the linen shipment is late? Your fault. When the stew is bland? Your taste is questioned. When the fields flood? God is punishing the house, and the house begins with you. Your hands are never idle. You spin wool. You mend garments. You embroider sheets you'll bleed on. You write letters in your husband's name. You smile at guests who speak to you like your furniture. You instruct your daughters in manners that will get them sold, and your sons in virtues they will never be held to. And still, it's not enough. Because above all duties, one is supreme, heirs. Your entire value, your safety, your status, your continued shelter, depends on your ability to bear sons. Not just children. Not just daughters. Sons. 1 is insurance. 2 is ideal. 3 is a dynasty. And if your womb does not deliver this legacy, you become a liability. They won't say it aloud. Not always. But the shift happens fast. The physician visits less. The maids look through you. Your husband speaks of remarriage in theory, then in jest, then in front of guests. You are no longer the lady of the house. You are a vessel that failed. Your value drops like a spoiled cask of wine. And there is no return. No remarriage. No new dowry. No path to freedom. You can't start over. You can't work to redeem yourself. You are already used. Already spent. Already broken. Because in this economy of wives, your body was the currency. And you bled too much of it away. You see other women fade like you do. Slowly. Elegantly. With perfect posture and perfect silence. They vanish behind veils. Behind embroidery frames. Behind the curtain at court where no one remembers their names, only whose sons they bore. No one says they're dying. But you know they are. You can see it in the way they walk. In the way they fold their hands and nod when spoken to, but their eyes have drifted elsewhere, into the past, into the garden, into a version of themselves that once dreamed of joy. You pass them in corridors like ghosts brushing past each other. No greetings. Just a shared absence. And when one of them finally disappears, back to her father's manor, or to a nunnery, or to a cold grave outside the chapel wall, there is no mourning. Just reassignment. A new wife will be found. One with wider hips. One with stronger teeth. One who hasn't yet miscarried twice. She will pick up where you failed. And one day, she will vanish too. Because you were never people to them. You were positions. You were functions. You were costs in search of profit. And if you can look at her life, her aching hands, her torn womb, her endless labor, and feel nothing, say so. Say it in the comments. Let your silence speak for hers. But if you're not heartless. If you watched this far and her story dug itself into the softest part of you, then do what no one in her time did. See her. Remember her. And subscribe, so she doesn't vanish again. The first time you become a wife, you are young. The second time, you are tired. Not in years, but in use. The bruises you learned to hide the first time never truly faded. The muscles that tore in childbirth never fully healed. The woman they bring to the altar again is not the same girl who whispered, "I will," in front of a church door. She is quieter now. She knows what waits behind vows. She does not cry at the lace of the veil or the chill of the ring. She does not dream. Your first husband is dead. A fever, they say. Or war. Or wine. Or justice. No one mourns too deeply. No one asks if you're relieved. That would be indecent. But behind closed doors, the whispers begin almost immediately. She's still young enough. She could yet bear more children. Her dowry is already paid, she's a bargain. Because widowhood does not make you free. It only makes you available. You are not permitted to own your late husband's land, even if you managed it for years. The estate reverts to his male heir, or his brother. You become an appendage to your children's inheritance. You cannot claim guardianship. You cannot rule in your own right. You are passed, again. Like a parcel of land with slightly diminished value. And the second time, they do not even pretend you are the prize. Your new husband is older. A lord with a title in need of restoration, or a knight with debts and an eye for widows. Perhaps he already has sons. Perhaps he has a reputation. No one cares. He wants a wife who knows how to bleed quietly. A woman who will not argue when he drinks too much, who will not cry when the door is locked behind her. He wants someone already broken in. And they say you're perfect. You stand beside him at the altar, and you do not smile. You do not flinch when he touches your hand. The priest reads the same vows. The villagers whisper the same prayers. And when he lifts your veil, you stare into his eyes and see nothing at all. Because this is not rebirth. This is recapture. And this cage is smaller than the first. Your new husband is cruel in different ways. More calculating. More paranoid. He forbids your letters. He checks your accounts. He watches the way you speak to servants. He reminds you, often, that second wives are suspect. If he grows tired of you, he has tools, he can accuse you of adultery, and there is no defense. A glance, a rumor, a stain on your underclothes is enough. He can pursue annulment, claiming you deceived him about your fertility, your chastity, your loyalty. He can whisper the word witch. That one is the easiest. If you know herbs too well. If you speak too sharply. If you fail to bear children quickly enough. If his cows die. If his finger aches in the rain. You can be called unnatural. Unholy. Unclean. And no one will stop him. Because the second wife is always more expendable. Because you've already been used. Because any suffering that happens to you now is seen not as tragedy, but as correction. And yet, you endure. Because you must. Because your daughters watch you. Because your sons still need protection. Because there is no place to run, and no one waiting with open arms. You wear your submission like armor. You keep your eyes down and your hands folded. You memorize his moods like tides. You soften your voice, smooth your dresses, forget the name you once called yourself in secret. You become the version of yourself least likely to be destroyed. And still, he finds fault. Because second marriages in your world are not new beginnings. They are continued sentences. And you serve them until death. Or until accusation. Or until silence becomes your only sanctuary. If you've come this far and still believe she chose this life, still believe she had power in the pages of her own story, then leave your silence where it lies. But if you know better, if you felt the bars of her second cage settle into your own chest, subscribe. Because each click is a rebellion. And each absence is a verdict. Let her ghost count your decision. You wake before dawn. Again. Not because the household stirs. Not because the bells toll for mass. You wake because your heart is pounding in your throat, because the dream has returned, only this time, it wasn't a dream. It was memory. Memory of the last time he struck you hard enough that your vision split. Memory of the way he whispered, cold and casual, "No one will help you. You belong to me." And you believed him. Because it was true. It's still true. And yet, you run. You run not because you believe you'll be free. You run because the walls have closed in so tightly that breathing is a kind of betrayal, and the only way to survive is to flee. The world outside the manor is dark. Dirt beneath your feet. Dew rising from the fields. No carriage. No cloak. No name. Only the hope that somewhere beyond the reach of his fists and his titles, a woman might become something else. But the law does not see you as a woman. It sees you as property gone rogue. You are not a soul seeking sanctuary. You are an outlaw wife. A criminal. A fugitive. The church calls you disobedient. The courts call you a defector. The village calls you a shameful whisper. Your husband calls you missing. And the law calls you his, whether you consented or not. There is no asylum. No legal route to freedom. No formal complaint. No hearing. No judge who will listen when you say, "He broke my ribs. He starved me for speaking out. He took everything but my heartbeat." Instead, there is only one question: where is she? They'll find you if you linger in the woods too long. They'll find you if you seek food from kind eyes at the market. They'll find you if you speak your real name to a stranger with a cross on his chest. Because the world does not pity a wife who flees, it hunts her. And the hunters are many. Your husband can ride with a writ in hand, signed by a magistrate who never met you. He can deputize the very men who once drank at your wedding feast. He can pay coin to stable boys and churchmen, to shepherds and barkeeps and schoolmasters, all eager to trade your return for a favor, or a debt forgiven. Even the midwife who once cleaned your blood from the birthing bed will point the way if asked. Because a wife who runs threatens the whole system. If one woman escapes, what will the others start to imagine? So they make you a warning. They tell your story in taverns, twisted. She ran with a soldier. She was unfaithful. She struck her husband in his sleep. She's mad. And they tell the young girls, better to be beaten than branded. Better to be silent than hunted. Better to be broken in your own bed than buried in an unmarked ditch for running. Some women flee further. They bind their breasts in steel trousers, disappear into convents, cross borders in the beds of merchants, live as men under false names for the rest of their lives. Their survival becomes a performance. Every step, every sentence, a calculated risk. But most are caught. And when they are, there is no trial. Only punishment. You are returned like a stolen sheep. Not with shackles, those are for men, but with shame. With paraded silence. With whispers in the pews and lashes in the courtyard and a priest at your side reminding you that wives who run defy not only man, but God. And if you die in flight, starved, frozen, or worse, there is no holy rest. Suicide is a sin. Escape is a sin. You will not be buried in the consecrated ground. Your name will be struck from the family rolls. No daughter will be allowed to carry it. No son will mourn you. Because you tried to live beyond the sentence you were given. Because you tried to choose yourself. And that is the greatest rebellion of all. So if you heard her footsteps on the road, if you felt her breath hitch in the woods as the dogs closed in, if you understood why she ran even though she knew she wouldn't make it, then don't let her vanish. Subscribe. Because she lived for a moment, wild and terrified, outside the law that bound her. And even if they erased her name, you can still speak it in defiance. And if you won't, if you believe she should have stayed, say it below. Let her ghost read your reasons. But know this, she will not go quietly again. You kneel in the chapel. Stone floor beneath your knees. Blood from your latest miscarriage still drying on your shift. The bruises haven't bloomed fully yet. Still yellow at the edges, like ripening fruit. You bow your head, not in reverence, but in resignation. You are here for absolution. But not for your sins. For your pain. For daring to feel it. For daring to wish it would end. For daring to imagine a world where your body was not a battlefield blessed by incense and shame. The priest waits. Not a man you know well. They rotate now, too many whispers. But he wears the collar. That's all that matters. That's what grants him the right to listen, to judge, to speak as if God sits in the corner, nodding. You begin, a whisper, a tremble, a truth uncoiling itself slowly. He hits me. You say it so quietly you almost hope he won't hear. But he does. And he says nothing. Not at first. He does not flinch. He does not gasp. He does not speak of sin, not his. He asks, do you obey him? Your silence is too long. So he asks again. Do you obey your husband, child? Child. Even now. You nod. Or lie. Or freeze. And then he speaks, not to comfort, not to intervene, but to instruct. He tells you that suffering is holy. That pain endured without complaint brings you closer to Christ. That a wife must be long-suffering, like the Virgin Mary watching her son crucified. That your husband is your cross, and you must carry him. He tells you the abuse is not your sin. But rebellion would be. Running. Speaking out. Refusing his bed. Speaking too sharply. Denying him your body. Those would be sins. He calls it your sacrament. And you, somehow, still ask, what if he kills me? And he replies, then you will die virtuous. Because the church does not save you. It sanctifies your endurance. The confession booth becomes a trap, a place where secrets go to suffocate. You confess your fears, your bruises, your grief, and in return, you receive not protection, but penance. Say 5 Hail Marys. Fast for 2 days. Be more patient. Pray for humility. Submit to him with grace. You are told that true virtue lies not in escape, but in acceptance. And the other women? They say the same. You meet them in shadowed corners, in whispered glances, in bloodied linens passed discreetly between servants. They have all tried confession. They have all walked away colder. Because the church was not built for your salvation. It was built for your control. Priests tell the men to govern their homes. They tell the women to lower their voices. They read Paul's letters like iron bars. They twist scripture into shackles. And you, faithful, bleeding, obedient, you are told that your silence is godliness. Even when you want to scream. Especially then. Because a woman who screams is hysterical. A woman who cries is manipulative. A woman who resists is possessed. And a woman who leaves is damned. And so, you stay. Not because you're too weak to leave. But because the place you were taught to run to, the place with the candles, and the bells, and the voice of heaven, turned you away with a smile. And now you kneel again. Wounded. Afraid. Begging for something that will never come from that altar. You no longer believe he'll change. You no longer believe God sees you. You barely believe your voice matters at all. But you're still here. And if anyone hears this, if anyone out there still believes the holy cannot be cruel, still believes obedience is a virtue, even when it kills, say so. Say it in the comments. Say why her pain doesn't shake you. Why her voice still isn't enough. But if you heard her, really heard her, then do what no priest, no scripture, no sanctuary ever did, honor her. Witness her. Remember her. Subscribe. Because you are hearing a scream that history silenced for centuries. And today, for just a moment, she was allowed to speak again. She dies at 34. It is quiet. No procession. No lamentations. No trumpets to announce the end of a life worn thin by duty. Only the scraping of a shovel. Only the groaning of the earth making space for yet another woman who gave everything and received nothing. The cause, they say, was childbirth. Her seventh. The baby did not survive. She did not survive. The midwife left before dawn, hands stained, lips tight. The priest came late, muttering the rites with the detachment of a man reading a ledger. He did not speak her name. He did not ask if she suffered. He did not look at her face. No bell tolls. No portrait is commissioned. The burial is swift. Efficient. Like sweeping ashes into a corner. The stone that marks her resting place bears only her husband's crest. No first name. No date of birth. No epitaph. Her life is summed up in the curve of a sigil she never asked to wear. She is buried beside the child she bore, beneath a tree that will not bloom for another month. No one weeps long. Because they've seen it before. Because there is another wife to be found. Because grief, for women, is an indulgence no one budgets for. But in the manor's upper chamber, her daughter watches. 12 years old. Hair brushed and braided, her morning dress pulled tight around her ribs. She does not cry either. Not because she doesn't want to, but because she understands now. She saw the blood. She saw the sheets burned behind the barn. She heard the prayers whispered by candlelight, how quickly they changed from hope to surrender. She knows the word widower means little when the husband is already speaking to messengers, already inquiring about alliances, dowries, wombs that might replace the one just lowered into the ground. But what chills her most is what happens after. The way the servants look at her. The way her father begins to speak of her in new terms. She'll make a fine match. Already graceful. Old enough, I'd say. And then, the dress. Her mother's dress. Resewn. Resized. Pressed with lavender to mask the scent of rot. The same gown that soaked up 7 labors, stitched now for a girl not yet bled. Then the ring. It is removed from her mother's cold hand without ceremony. It is cleaned. It is slipped onto her finger by a nurse with downcast eyes. Practice keeping it on, the nurse says. And she does. Because to protest would be to dishonor. Because to cry would be to disobey. Because somewhere inside her, a voice is already whispering that this is all she was made for. She is introduced to men. Noblemen. Older than her father. Thin smiles. Fat fingers. Dead eyes. They appraise her like she's livestock, checking teeth, posture, the curve of her wrists. One of them brings her a necklace. Another, a prayer book. Another simply stares. Betrothal begins not with a celebration, but with a haunting. Her body, still unformed, is being carved into a shape her mother once wore. And it fits too easily. Because this is not a tragedy. It is a pattern. And patterns are not mourned. They are repeated. The ring. The veil. The blood. The grave. They will say she was fortunate. That she married well. That she honored her family. That she brought children into the world and passed gently in her sleep. They will not say that she lived with fear lodged in her womb. They will not say that she screamed for a midwife who came too late. They will not say that the daughter now wears her bones like prophecy. And so, the pattern marches forward, one woman deepens the groove, the next one steps inside it. She dies at 34. Her daughter bleeds at 13. And no one stops it. Because it is tradition. Because it is sacred. Because it is how it has always been. If you felt her absence. If your chest ached when they buried her under her husband's name. If the sight of her daughter in that same cursed gown made your hands tremble, then don't scroll. Don't go silent like the stone above her head. Subscribe. Because somewhere in the lines of this pattern, in the seam of that dress, in the whisper of that girl's breath, there is still time to remember her. And if you won't, then speak in the comments. Tell her why her name didn't matter enough. Tell her daughter why no one came. You return to the hall. The same stone walls. The same candlelight trembling on old wood. The same silence, thick as wool, pressing against your ribs. It smells of lavender and iron and something older, something that still hasn't left. The ghosts are quieter now. Not gone. Just, watching. You stand where she stood. Where she bled. Where she prayed. Where she disappeared. And the whisper of steel is still there, the faint echo of a sword drawn outside, of brothers dueling while their sisters were being signed away. The walls still breathe. They remember everything. Every oath. Every cry. Every time a girl looked out the window and wondered if she'd ever see the sun without a veil between her and the sky. And now, it's your turn to look. Not through a stained glass lens. Not with distance. But here. Now. Barefaced. Brave. Because she lived. She lived through every tightening lace, every forced smile at the altar, every night she lay still and silent as her body was claimed again and again in the name of duty, of bloodline, of God. She lived through pain that was never named, because naming it would have made it real. She lived through a history that erased her face but kept her obedience. And you? You watched. You walked with her. You felt her breath in the birthing chamber. You heard the scrape of dirt over her grave. You saw her daughter slip into her dress like a punishment. And now, what? Do you scroll away? Do you forget her like the rest? Do you shake your head and say, it was a different time, as if cruelty ever needed a calendar? Or do you stay? Do you sit with her story, even when it burns? Do you wonder, not if this could happen again, but how it already is? Because here's the truth. The walls may be made of glass now, not stone. The cages may come with diamond rings. The obedience may be repackaged as choice. The silence may be dressed up as politeness, loyalty, faith. But the pattern remains. So ask yourself, what parts of this still survive today, dressed in modern clothes? The girl told she must settle down. The wife who flinches when no one is looking. The mother who's expected to smile through exhaustion. The daughter who's taught that her worth begins when she's desired. The woman who whispers, no, but isn't heard because the world has already said, yes, on her behalf. We have changed the language. We have edited the script. But the play continues. So ask yourself, are you part of the forgetting, or the remembering? Will you pass her story on? Will you say her name when others won't? Will you see the women who are still kneeling in confessionals, still bleeding in delivery rooms, still being told their pain is holy? Or will you leave her here? Again. You return to the hall. You carry her breath inside yours. You decide what happens next. If her voice shook something loose inside you, don't let it go quiet again. Subscribe. Speak. Remember. Because the difference between a grave and a monument is who keeps telling the story.